Hey, this is Dan, just to say that this week's episode is sponsored by Grey Issue 4, which is now funding on Kickstarter. You can find out more about this in the middle of the episode. Hello and welcome to Hey, I Loved That Movie, the podcast where we rewatch the films we loved when we were younger to see if they still hold up. I'm Dan.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Charlie.
And for this episode, we watched The Pagemaster. So, Charlie, we had not seen this movie before, so this was your recommendation. What's your connection to this movie? What do you love about this movie?
This film is everything to me because it's the time when I had my little 12-inch box TV and had the Pagemaster on video, and it was just one of those things where I'd watch it, rewind, watch again, rewind, watch it. It is just magic to me, and watching this again, it holds up for me. And I know it's one of those films that seems to have sort of slipped away from the mainstream kind of films you watch as a kid. And that's why I love it, is that it's like, to me, it's like this hidden little gem that, I mean, don't get me wrong, completely flopped at the box office, like crazy flopped at the box office, but it's just so magical, imagination and books and becoming a better version of yourself, and it's just really delightful, I found. And it's just good fun. Like it's very on the nose, it's very obvious what it's about. Like there's not much hidden behind it, it's all on the surface, but it's just good fun, and it is literally just like an hour long.
It is. It was really. I was so shocked at how short it was because it just ends quite abruptly.
Yeah. I didn't realize actually how short it was until I rewatched, and I thought, yeah, okay, all right, this was a thing, like just over an hour. But I find it magical. Like for me, it's just a wonderful little thing that I just come back to. It's real nice, guys. But now I get to hear what you both thought of this film.
Oh, it's short. No.
It's short. It's short, yeah.
No, I have little issues with it, but no, in general, I can't work out why it was made because it feels like it was made for a very specific purpose. So the story of this film is Macaulay Culkin, again, refuse to remember characters' names, is a kid terrified of everything. He gets caught in a storm. Well, heavy rain.
He's told to his parents want him to go to the shop and get some tartan paint or some other like menial task.
Some nails.
Nails, yes. Yeah. And he's like cycling on, gets caught in a massive storm, goes through the tunnel from Back to the Future. I'm surprised he takes a bike, to be fair, if he's terrified, unless statistically more accidents happen walking than on bikes.
He's a well-researched kid.
Yeah, but he comes out the other end of that tunnel and it's just like a massive thunderstorm, and it's like, wow, this kid's parents are dicks. Like...
Yeah, they must have known it was going to storm later. And they were like, you know what will fix this kid?
A cycle in the rain to get some nails.
Yeah, send him out in the rain. Yeah. That might make him not scared of everything.
Yeah, he goes into a library for shelter where Doc Brown, or as he's called in this, Mr. Dewey, which I'm guessing is for... surname decimal system. So yeah, he wants to go and find a payphone so he can phone his parents. Slips on some rain, whacks his head, and is left there to have a fucking psycho daydream for about an hour.
Yeah, no. Can we talk about that librarian? Because
he's so creepy.
He is so creepy. He's unneededly creepy. He is really scary, especially because. So the first thing he says to the boy. So number one, Macaulay Culkin is the only person in this library.
It's a very empty
library, huge library. The first thing he says to him is like, "I know why you're here. I know why everyone's here. I just need time to work it out." And then he says, "Oh, you probably want to read a book." Like, no.
No shit.
There's a wild shot in the dark. You probably need to read something. You're in a library.
You know what's so great, though, is that library was so barren. As soon as he came in, the guy had to put the lights on because he was just like, do you know what? Fuck this. There's no one in.
Yeah.
So turn the lights off. He's having a kip in the back, took some books out, and he's like, well, shit, there's a kid here. He definitely wants a book.
I should go as close to him as possible.
I finally get to do my job.
Yeah, and scared little child is like, can I go home? And he's like, yes, but you have to run into the library. I'm not going to show you where the phone is. You'll have to find it yourself. Hope you don't slip and hurt yourself. Goodbye, child.
Yeah, he's standing under a cool mural full of foreshadowing and plot points. Like, one thing that I did find really cool. So all of the mural and that starts to like drop
It
down. I was
melts on
like,
him.
oh, he's going to become Venom.
Well, no, it's because the interior of the library is painted with LSD. All the walls
It's
are
one
laced
big
with
trip,
LSD.
yeah.
He's just fucking tripping the whole time. But yeah, like I really enjoyed. So when he's like running away and all this paint's like sloshing up behind him and turning all the books and everything into animation, I thought that bit looked really cool. Like
It-
that was really quite nicely done.
No,
Yeah.
this film has amazing animation. Like as I've said with every traditional animation film we've watched, I love this style of film. I love this style of animation. It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It's actually that bit where he's running through like the shelves and it hits the shelves and turns it into an animation. I didn't realize that until I rewatched this. When I was a kid, I never noticed. I was just watching like all this paint and watching it run away. I didn't see that it was turning everything into like a cartoon. So when I watched this again, I was like, hang on. And I went back and I was like, oh, okay, that was like a tiny little detail I completely missed. But yeah, it's and it took them 3 years to make that film. And you can sort of see like when the paint drops down, it's a little bit, off.
CGI.
But it's
Yeah.
it's still wonderful, I think.
Yeah, this was the first film that used CGI, that mixed CGI and traditional animation. And again, as we know from on this podcast, films we've watched before, it was swiftly killed by Treasure Planet.
Yep.
They made Treasure Planet and went, never again. We're never using this style ever again. So it had a short-lived style, had a very short-lived time, but it is beautiful to see. It is incredible. It's just a lot of it. It's really short, this film, and it took 3 years to make.
Yeah, that's and like probably 20 minutes of it are like live action, because it starts live action, turns into an animated one, and then at the end, when spoilers for a really old movie now, he wakes up after having a concussion, back to live action.
So the actual like story, once he's in the animation world, it's essentially him going through like classic novels, right?
Yeah, so he's met by a character called the Pagemaster, which is just a fancy word for librarian. And then there's these 3 books that sort of appear. There's the first one that appears is Adventure, who is like a little pirate book, and he's like, "Arr." There's Fantasy, which is the only woman in the movie apart from his mum, I guess. And then Horror, who's like some sort of like Frankenstein book sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it's Treasure Island, Cinderella, I think, and Frankenstein are the 3
Frankenstein,
books.
yes.
Yeah.
He's the hunchbook. He's the hunchbook. He's fun fact about him, about the character. His father was an encyclopedia and his mother was a paperback, and that's why he's so misshapen, is that he's never felt like himself, like he's completely and utterly misshelved, misshapen, and always has sad endings. So I don't know if that specifically translated, but that was a fun little bit I found out about our little horror, voiced by Frank Welker, voiced of over 800 characters. What a man.
He doesn't stop talking. So wait, is that an official thing then, that he's the son of a paperback and a hardback?
Yeah, he's there's this cool you're welcome to have a little look. There's this cool behind the scenes. It's like 20 minutes. And it's Christopher Lloyd as Mr. Dewey, like coming up to the camera, and he's like, "Well, hello there, welcome to my library." And then he breaks character by saying, "This film follows Macaulay Culkin," which I thought was a bit weird. I don't know if he just forgot the name of the character at that moment. And they just talk about like all the different characters and how they made it, kind of generic stuff, but it's quite cute.
That brings up a solid question about this universe, though. How do books happen? Because 2 books had a child. Is what I'm getting at.
Well, they read this little book called the Kama Sutra.
No. No.
That's what we need, a Pagemaster reboot.
No. It's the porn parody.
The Page Masturbator.
No. Stop.
Oh, okay, right. Before we go off on a horrible tangent.
I'm okay with tangents.
Before we go on a horrible pornographic tangent. So anyway, he opens a book and a bunch of tentacles come out of it.
Ew.
because he opens.
He was in the wrong
I think
section.
it's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It is a giant squid sort of one. And I saw that bit and I was like, wow. So like when they open the book, things from the book come out into the real world. I was like, is it lucky he didn't like open The Shining or something? Not expecting later in the movie when they're in the horror section, like there are genuine horror books like The Shining and Pet Sematary and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, as if they just had to animate.
They just had to deal with that. They were in a board meeting and one of them was like, you've taken the horror section a bit too far. We're going to have to tone it back. We don't need the shower scene.
So yeah, the kid's like, so where he's terrified of everything, essentially he has to conquer horror, adventure, and fantasy to become better, I guess, and then he can get out. It's his little, while he's passed out, he has a fever dream, and when he wakes up, he's like, I should be confident.
I'm less scared now. I'm less scared after being knocked unconscious in this weird giant library. I'm less scared of the world now. The animation's really cool. It's so quick though. This film is done so fast.
Yeah, it's very to the point. Like it's it's a kids film.
Yeah,
but it's the
so
definition
fast.
of kids film. It's just here's the plot. He's got his character arc. He improves over time, and then he's fine.
Yeah, it's very. That's one thing that I noticed about this is it's very generic Hollywood screenwriting structure from 1994. It follows it to the letter. Like it's the character in the ordinary world. He's a little pussy hole, so his dad's like, right, go and get me some nails and fucking stop being a little pussy hole. And he goes,
I want to finish your fucking treehouse that I fell out of.
Yeah, put some work in. And then he goes off and he ends up at the library and then he meets the mentor, Mr. Dewey, and he's absolutely mental. He's like, you've come for a book, thank God. We've sat here on my ass for hours. It's been weeks since someone came into the library. And then he meets all his allies, and it's very generic Hollywood script structure. So it's probably a good example of just how to follow a formula in writing.
It was a lot of solid, because you said this film vanished, because it is so typical that it does kind of just vanish.
Yeah, I say I had never heard of this movie before.
I've seen so much of it though. I've seen so many images of it as memes and pictures online.
Pagemaster memes.
Yeah.
All right, I've got something new to delve into.
Yeah, no, just random pictures that I've seen. I've realized how much of this I've seen watching it. And is it one of those films that's just in a lot of people's subconscious of I watched this as a kid? Because it has that vibe. Something we've discovered doing this podcast is everyone seems to have a weird kid film that they watched as a kid, a film they watched as a kid that no one around them seems to remember, and you've seen it so much as a kid. All of those films, every time I've talked to someone, they've said they've all been financial failures and they've all vanished really quickly.
It's probably what happened was your parents got it for £1 or something at a boot fair and was like, hey, there you go, have a VHS.
But no one has heard of them.
Yeah,
Never heard of the Pagemaster. I've only seen pictures that I didn't know were from it.
Yeah, it is definitely one of those that sort of slipped. But something I didn't know was that it was written and I guess, is it directed or produced by the same guy who did Child's Play and the Chucky films? David Kirshner.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I just read into that and I thought, okay, when was the jump from, did you do this film first and then think, do you know what, this is not my style? And thought, right, mental doll kills people. Yep, that's it. That's where the money is.
It'd be the other way around, wouldn't it? He would have made Chucky. When did Chucky come? Child's Play films come out?
I thought Child's Play was late 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah, so he was midway through making them because they continued to make them.
This was his break from a killer doll. He was like, let's just make something really...
Just make something friendly.
Really off the track. Some kid just hits his head and ends up in books. I don't know. Let's do that. 3 years.
It was actually a script he wrote for a Chucky movie, but they couldn't get it to work because dolls can't get knocked unconscious.
No, they can't.
That was it.
They trip on acid.
But yeah, there's I think Mikey was saying earlier, there's loads of references to not just books and literature, but to nursery rhymes and stuff. There's Mother Goose, Humpty Dumpty. There's did anyone catch the reference to Edgar Allan Poe? It was in the horror bit where the raven flies down and screams nevermore. It's Edgar Allan Poe's poem.
Oh,
the Raven.
yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was quite neat. That was
it was just so full of references to classic literature and stuff because the main villain in the horror section is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
After that, when they go into, I mean, Adventure ends up being split into two parts because at first you get Captain Ahab and the White Whale, which eats the other books apparently, and then it becomes the third time we've watched Treasure Island for this podcast.
Every time, every like 4 podcasts, we accidentally watch Treasure Island.
Yeah, canonically second released Treasure Island, but still.
Keep watching it.
Yeah, like there was a great bit where they a bit that really made me laugh was when they get onto the pirate's boat and they pick up the adventure book and they shake him to get any weapons out, and just so many things fall out, including like a nuke, which was real weird. Yeah. It looked like someone had picked up a character in Fallout 4 and emptied their inventory on the floor.
It's such a weird film though. Like it's so like coming away from it. I know I'm probably biased because I've got so much nostalgia for it. Like even the music, and I could probably quote a lot of like little tidbits from it. But like it's very surface. Like it is like I love the references, but when you sort of look at it, it's like, oh, okay, it's just loads of different literary stuff just crammed into an hour's worth of this kid sort of roaming around. But it's so pretty.
Yeah, it felt like the film was designed. It looked like it was paid for by a charity that gets kids to read books. Like that's what it felt like. It was trying really hard to get
failed really hard.
Like the film is trying so hard to prove that books are really cool. All it does is make films look better.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just so chock full of references that if the people haven't read the books in the first place, they're never going to get it. No. Like kids don't care that there's a raven shouting nevermore, or there was the bit where the horror book gets like Gullivered as well.
It feels like it's trying really hard to get kids to read, and it's not.
It's like it's trying to say that, oh, if you read this book, you'll become better. Maybe Macaulay Culkin was actually just reading a book the whole time.
Well, yeah, I think that's meant to be it. I think that's meant to be the point. Is he just went into a library and read, but he saw it as this like grand adventure because the librarian, he calls himself the Pagemaster, lined all the pages with LSD.
No, what happened was the Pagemaster actually inceptioned him. Like while Macaulay Culkin was knocked out, he sat down next to him and like read a book into his ear.
Yeah.
If only this episode was sponsored by Audible, we'd have a great time.
That would be an amazing segue.
And speaking of sponsors, this episode is sponsored by Grey Issue 4, which is now funding on Kickstarter. Grey is the story of an ex-undercover cop back from the dead to take down the mob he was infiltrating. Oh, and he's made of concrete. It's written by me, Dan Faulkner, and features Charlie Skinner, who's in this episode, as the titular character model, and with artwork by Reese Finley. We're currently funding on Kickstarter to pay for the production of the comic, with backer rewards including digital and physical copies, posters, sketch cards, original artwork, and even the chance to get yourself drawn into the comic. Every backer shall also receive the first 3 issues digitally too. Check out the link in the show notes for more information. And now, back to the show.
Why, throughout the thing, whenever he meets a new book, it's desperately asking him to take them out of the library? Why are they so desperate to escape the library?
Crazy librarian.
Yeah, maybe.
What is the Pagemaster doing to the books?
I'm guessing it's because it's such a big library and there's clearly no one there to take the books out. They want to be taken out and read, you know?
Yeah, no wonder they're so scared of the Pagemaster.
Yeah.
Horror always has sticky pages.
When Macaulay Culkin got home, when he told his parents what happened, there would be police at that library, right?
No, that's the kind of the library where the police would be like, but there's not been a library there in 84 years.
No, but like, if a kid comes up to you, say you have kids, and they come up to you and say, I went to the library to get out of the rain, and there was this man there, the librarian, he called himself the Pagemaster. He told me to run further into the library to find a phone to call home. I then fell unconscious as everything melted around me, and then I was in a book. You'd be like, I'm calling the police. Your first response would be, I'm calling the police, and
this kid got molested for sure.
this kid was at least drugged, because I get the feeling they'd turn up there and the librarian would be gone. But yeah, no, it's such like one of those, it's very much a kids film in that like after the ending nothing happens.
Yeah, it's like he's better now, I guess. He fought a dragon. He, crashed a carpet. He watched two books kiss for some reason. Oh my god, there was that scene so at some point the adventure and fantasy books kiss, and I was like, that was so unnecessary. And then the adventure book says, "How would you like to curl up with a good book?"
Yep.
Yeah, so they end up being attacked by that dragon at one point, and while he gets swallowed by the dragon, and then inside the dragon is the book Jack and the Beanstalk. I'm like, now I know where they got the idea for the whole Jaren's Outpost thing. Just grow a tree in a dragon's face.
Such a specific reference.
Yeah, that was a very specific reference. But yeah, like he gets out of the dragon by just making a massive beanstalk out of it, and then manages to get out.
Get out fine because it's a kids film. Like watching a kids film like this as an adult, there's no suspense. There's no like cool because unless you watch it as a kid and you have the nostalgia, like that nostalgic helps memory thing.
Yeah,
you kind of just like nothing is gonna happen because it's a kids film and they're gonna survive. Nothing bad's gonna happen.
No, he gets knocked unconscious, and then you can tell nothing bad's gonna happen because at the end, like the parents have clearly had to phone the police. He's clearly been gone a while.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They come back and they see him asleep in the treehouse, and they're like, "Oh, it's cool. We can just leave him there. It's fine." It's like, no, if that kid rolls over in the night, he's gonna fall out and fucking knock himself unconscious again.
Yeah. But also, if this was an animated film from like 10 years earlier, one of the main characters would be killed. It's in a very safe zone in the 90s. There was no like drastically scary stuff, but in like the 70s and 80s, kids' films were terrifying.
Yeah, like the horror section would have had like some actual horrific stuff. Imagine if they just like go into it and do open up like a Stephen King book or something.
Yeah, like this film didn't have the childhood nightmare scene, the scary scene that every child film has. This film didn't have it. It was quite like pleasant throughout.
I mean, it was a nice film. I can see why it's one that you just, like you said, Charlie, you just like rewound it and watched it again and again because it seems like quite a simple watch. I guess you can just sort of sit and relax and watch it.
Yeah, it was just literally it's just all about imagination and just books and all that kind of stuff. Like it's just fun. It was just fun. It's a fun
it's
time.
A fun film.
Right, that's all it is really. Like it's like a theme park. It's fun. It's colorful. It's cool. Like I think the behind the scenes stuff and how they do it is probably more like interesting, and the time they spent, like all the figurines and stuff that they did for this, like hand drawn animation, all that kind of stuff is always like so much more fascinating, I suppose. But yeah, the end result is kind of short and just kind of like as an adult, it's like, well, yeah, it's gonna be fine, isn't it?
Also, another thing about this film is very indicative of its era of like every film we've talked about from this period. Production hell. This film was awful to make, from what I've read. It was massively over budget, and all of the workers say that was due mostly to mismanagement.
Wow.
Like the studio, they kept getting like fucked over by management. Then the director put himself as primary credit for being a writer. He called himself the story and only writer, and there was a huge lawsuit over that. Because
wow.
There was another writer. There was the other guy that wrote it was the primary writer, and he put more time and effort into the script. So there was a huge over that. Like these films from this time, and with so many of them that we've watched, they are just awful in production. They're terrible. And then they manage to make it and they all flop.
Yeah, it's always such a big risk for kids' films because I guess at the end of the day, like it's still the adults in charge of taking the kids to go and see the movie.
Kids' films are surprisingly good, like guaranteed money. But this was that weird time where there were experimental kids' films and then there were like normal kids' films. This was an experimental kids' film. And they've all flopped. All of them, as far as I can tell. And all the normal kids' films did fine. But they kept making them. They kept making, and that's what we talk about. Experimental kids' films, because none of us watched the normal ones, from as far as I can tell. No, we don't want to come on and talk about Lilo and Stitch. No, show me the Pagemaster.
That's the good stuff.
That's the good is an overstatement.
It was all right.
It was fine.
No, it is. Yeah.
I guess if you had to put a number on it, out of 10, how many? I mean, the only thing I can think of is like how many classic book references out of 10. That, or how many millions did it lose?
Oh no.
Actually, I think it was a good 13 million that they lost. I think it was around 13.7 million or something like that. That gotta hurt.
So out of 10.
For
Because you have the nostalgia for it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just from memory, I'd say it's probably 8 pages. It's a good 8 pages for me.
Why 8 out of 10?
Because it's just it's just like it's just simple and it's fun, like on the surface, and it's just easy to watch. Like there's nothing to figure out about this film, like apart from the fun of like being an adult and being like, oh, there's the raven from that poem which I can't remember the name of, and there's Moby Dick. It's kind of just like that, kind of like a word search. You wouldn't spend too much time on it, but it's a bit of fun whilst you're doing it. So for me, it's a good 8.
Thinking about it, it did make me want to read classic literature, like little things. Kind of want to read Moby Dick again now, and like I guess that's the point.
There you go.
Wasn't sponsored by him, but I guess it works on me, not a child. Don't know how I feel about that.
The movie has successfully gotten its point across to you.
Yeah.
So how many of the books that it references out of 10 are you going to give it?
Oh, me. I think like 6 terrifying space invading librarians. 6 like utterly horrifying librarians out of 10. Because it's a really good kids film. So many weird implications from just bits that they throw out. And but I do think that it was trying really hard to get kids to read, and I think it failed. I think it failed just because it makes films look so much better. Like it makes films exciting, and no kid is going to watch this and go, "I'm going to read."
No, exactly. Yeah, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10 as well. 6 movies I'd rather see than read the books. Like it was like perfectly fine. It was a nice movie. I can see why kids enjoyed it. It was just a nice sort of chill kids film, really.
Good film to watch on a tiny CRT TV in your bedroom.
Yeah, pretty much. And if not, if you don't fancy watching the Pagemaster, go read a book. Go read some books.
Well, with that, I have been Dan.
I have been Michael.
And I have been Charlie.
And you can find us at Hilton Pod. That is at HILTM Pod on Twitter and Instagram. If you're on there, let us know what you think of the podcast. It'd be good to get some feedback.
Thank you for listening, listeners.
Please come back.
No, stay away. Books that come to life.
A ballad.
There's a ghost at some point, I think. Ooh, spooky ghosts.